What are some solved mysteries? In 1981, a Soviet submarine ran aground in Swedish waters. This was a huge deal. Although the Soviets claimed the sub was in distress and didn't purposefully enter Swedish waters, basically everyone in Sweden saw it as evidence that their waters were being invaded by spy subs. Plus, they did some snooping of their own and determined that the sub was emitting radiation, meaning it had nukes on board. So they went along with the Soviets' clearly false claim about an accident and helped get the sub out of there, but panic was in the air. So the Swedes did exactly what you'd expect, and they prepared for more Soviet subs. I mean, when you see one Soviet sub, surely there are more, right? So Sweden developed advanced acoustic technology to detect subs, and they created a plan to basically seal off their waters when they heard a sub. And wouldn't you know it, a year later, they found a Soviet sub. Well, they didn't find it, but they absolutely heard it, and they cut off the bay and figured they just had to hunt the sub down. But after a month, they couldn't find it. They gave up and reopened the bay, but they assumed the sub found a way out. But they'll get it next time! And then it happened again, but they couldn't find it again, and then again and again with no clear pattern for a decade. What the heck? Thankfully, the Berlin Wall fell and the Soviet Union collapsed. So, no more subs, right? Yet, because the Russian subs were still coming. Wait, what? Okay, so now nothing is making sense. At this point, the Swedish military brought in outside experts to figure out what was happening. This included oceanographer types who were obvious experts in the surrounding waters. The military then played the audio evidence of the Soviet submarines, only to be told they weren't submarines at all, they were fish, and the propeller-like sound was water being released from their swim bladders. And that's the story of how the Swedish military spent 10 years and tens of millions of dollars chasing fish farts. The case of Adrienne Shelley, screenwriter for Waitress. Husband came home to find her hanging in the shower, ruled suicide. He insists she was happy and would never kill herself, promoting another view of crime scene where they found a shoe print that matched a construction worker in the building. Sure enough, the construction worker went to rob her and thought he killed her, so staged a suicide when the hanging ended up being the actual thing that killed her. That was his original testimony. He straight up killed her intentionally. The Sailing Stones of Death Valley. TLDR, rocks would magically move up to 1,500 feet in the desert. Turns out it gets cold and freezes the ground overnight, and the rocks would get pushed by the ice sheets that melted under the wind. The pioneers used to ride those babies for miles. The Bloop. TLDR in 1997, a really weird and loud noise was detected underwater, and everyone was all WTF was that? In 2012, it was determined it was an iceberg, breaking and/or rubbing against the seabed. In the 1970s, a number of Japanese citizens disappeared from coastal areas in Japan. After many years, it was found out that North Korea had abducted them. North Korean abductions of Japanese citizens. Edit. Megumi Yokota. Most of the missing were in their 20s. The youngest, Megumi Yokota, was 13 when she disappeared in November 1977 from the Japanese west coast city of Niigata. In case anyone is interested, also go look up that time Kim Jong-il kidnapped a South Korean director and his actress wife, as well as the SFX team behind Godzilla, in order to make his own monster movie. I have one that most people seem to not know about. Grand Duchess Anastasia was in fact killed with the rest of her family in 1918. She never escaped, and the several women throughout the 20th century claiming to be her lied. The site of the execution of the Tsar and his family was completely untouched until 1991. Excavation found only 9 of the 11 expected remains. It wasn't until 2007 that 2 further sets of remains were found a small distance away from the previous gravesite. DNA testing found that one of the sets of remains belonged to Tsarevich Alexei and the other to one of his sisters. With this find, it proved conclusively that the entire imperial family was in fact executed and buried in 1918. While it doesn't give us who the Zodiac Killer is, just recently his most infamous 340 cipher was solved after 51 years. According to Oranchak and team, the message reads, "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show, which brings up a point about me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner, because I now have enough slaves to work for me, where everyone else has nothing. When they reach paradise, so they are afraid of death. I am not afraid because I know that my new life will be an easy one in paradise death." He basically monologues like the ass-crack bandit. El Dorado, or the Lost City of Gold, turned out to be a mistranslation. It was just the name of some guy that got mistranslated to the name of a city. The Golden State Killer / East Area Rapist, Joseph James D'Angelo. a former police officer who was sacked for burglary and mechanic, American serial rapist, murderer, burglar, committed at least 13 murders, 50 rapes, and over 100 burglaries between 1973 and 1986. I was listening to the 6-part podcast called Case File, and they had not yet caught the suspect, but a year or so ago they finally got him after collecting DNA evidence when he put a tissue in the bin outside. It was a confirmed match. Edited to add, as I just did, a brief summary. Although it's been covered in the comments by me and a few others, I'll add here for clarification. He was caught a few days over 3 years ago. Time flies. He was only a cop for a short time before getting sacked. He was found shoplifting at the store for supplies, like a hammer, dog repellent, at that time, and not robbing a house. He left semen as evidence. Because he wasn't uploaded into the database or caught beforehand, there was no DNA match in the system. The way they got onto him as a suspect before gathering hard evidence of the tissue was a familiar match uploaded onto GenMatch by what was a third or fourth cousin of his. The officers in charge of case then went through 1,000 DNA profiles from his tree to finally narrow it down to him. They then swooped in to gather the tissue to get 100% clarity before the arrest. He was living with his daughter and 15-year-old granddaughter at the time of his arrest and was acting perfectly healthy and very fit for his age. When presenting to court, he was in a wheelchair and pretending to be senile. Such an act. He is also described by all his victims as having a very small penis, unusually small. At crime scenes, he would pretend to talk to someone else, go to the kitchen and make himself food or drink, leave beer bottles at the site and go back to raping. He would break in and prepare the home before coming back a few days later to rape. By doing this, he would leave little objects like guns or rope cut at certain lengths and steal items. By then, he would know the layout of the house. He would shine a torch in people's eyes to blind them. He'd often cry apologizing to his mummy or saying he wants his mummy. Other times, he was cussing a woman named Bonnie. Before breaking in and raping, he would stalk and call the phone line several times. He would then call the victims after the rape and breathe heavily into the phone and/or whisper. There is audio of one of these calls. It's quite disturbing. He also went back to rape a victim. If you haven't already, listen to the podcast Case File True Crime. You can find this on Spotify. I highly recommend it. The narrator is an Aussie who does an incredible job, and his voice is lovely and very easy to listen to. He gets right into the story and doesn't mess about. Look for the episode number 53. It's a 5-part case with following 2 bonus interviews, and an update before Case File episode 83. It's also been mentioned the HBO series, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, is a must-watch and about Joseph. And a book titled I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. The phone call I'm talking about is at 2 minutes mark. 1947, and British South American Airways aircraft named Stardust disappeared. Its last message was simply Stendek. After an exhausting search, no trace of the aircraft was found. For years, conspiracy theories and talk of alien abduction by wackos circulated. Till 1998, when mountain climbers on a remote mountain found an engine, pieces of metal and clothing at the bottom of a glacier on the side of Mount Tupungato. Turns out the aircraft got caught flying the wrong way in the jet stream while it was flying at night and using a system of timing when to start their descent. Being in the jet stream reduced their airspeed in relation to the Earth, and they smacked themselves straight into the side of a mountain, after which an avalanche covered the wreckage. The wreckage took decades to flow down the side of the mount with the glaciers. The glacier preserved the wreck so well that 50 years later, the recovery team found identifiable remains, personal items, and could read serial numbers on the engines. Amazing one of the landing gear tires was still inflated, and that teams continued to visit the site for periodically as more of the aircraft, cargo, and remains of passengers are still emerging from the ice. Mary Toft. I mean, really, what the fuck? TLDR, woman starts giving birth to copious amounts of rabbit parts. Woman taken to London and studied under intense supervision. Turns out she was shoving the pieces up there days before for the publicity. Human spontaneous combustion, not a real thing. It's where there was an overlooked source of ignition. Then subcutaneous fat is absorbed into clothing and acts like a wick. Basically, they're a human candle. Gitas and the Land of Ta. A few years ago, 2017, comedian Nate Fernald posted a tweet of an enamel pin he had bought of a familiar-looking friendly monster with the word Gitas written under it. He was unable to find any information on what Gitas is, and the mystery took the internet by storm. The mystery kept growing as someone found a sticker of Gitas alongside other characters, all listed as the Land of Ta. The sticker sheet was from a company called Denison. There were no Google results at all for either Gitas or the Land of Ta. With multiple people researching that was where the mystery was left off and people kind of forgot about it. But a couple years later, it was solved. A podcast was made where they investigated the mystery, got a hold of the former art director of Denison back in the 80s who referred them to a few potential artists, and they found the daughter of one of the artists who had passed away, and in her father's stuff was the original pencil drawings of the creatures of the Land of Tar. It was never anything but those stickers. This internet mystery still appeared on lists for a while as unsolved. The only mystery left is who made the enamel pins, which is still a mystery, but not quite as big as who is this character in this land that seems familiar but that there's no record of. The Pioneer Gravity Anomaly. Space probe wasn't accelerating away from Earth the way we predicted, but it didn't get noticed until the probe got way the fuck out there. Next space probe gets launched, gets way out there, same thing happens. WTF? How does acceleration not work right? Does gravity just change really far away? Turns out the heat from the radioactive death generator was all coming off the same side of the space probe, and the extra particle radiation gave a thermal recoil force, resulting in an extra acceleration of, no kidding, about 0.00000000874 meters per second squared. Over enough distance, it all counts. Bermuda Triangle/Devil's Sea, a triangle-shaped section of ocean where airplanes and boats were known to disappear. Apparently most stories were embellished, and there is so much traffic that goes through the area, it's actually a very small amount of vessels that go missing, percentage-wise. The Prophet Hen of Leeds. A hen was laying eggs with messages like, "Christ is coming," and people thought the world was ending. Turned out the farmer was actually writing on the eggs herself, and then reinserted it back into the chicken. Edit for gender of the farmer. The disappearance of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, author of The Little Prince, who was also a French reconnaissance pilot during World War II. In 1944, he took off on a reconnaissance mission from Corsica and never made it back, and there was never any evidence of what might have happened to him and his plane. Finally, in 1998, a French fisherman pulled up his net and found wrapped in it a silver bracelet engraved with Saint-Exupéry's name, and in 2004, a diver searched in the area and found the remains of his plane, which had apparently been shot down by a German fighter after all. The tomb of Jesus' previously unknown brother turned out to be a hoax to try to sell the tomb of a nobody for a lot of money. The French guy who claimed to be a missing boy in the 90s, he even lived with the crazy mother. Nicholas Barkley, aged 13 years old at the time he went missing, was last seen playing basketball with his friends in his hometown of San Antonio, Texas, on 13 June 1994. Barkley never made it home and has not been seen or heard from since. In 1997, Bourdin took Barkley's identity and was flown to the United States. Although Bourdin had brown eyes and a French accent, he convinced the family he was their blue-eyed son, saying he had escaped from a child prostitution ring and the ring had altered his eye color. Bourdin lived with the family for almost 5 months, until 6 March 1998. The craziest part is they recently found out the brother was the murderer and murdered Barkley with permission of his mother, and the only reason the French guy got away with it is because the family didn't want to reveal that they knew who killed Barkley. Not so much a mystery, but Fermat's last theorem lacked general proof for several hundred years, until Andrew Wiles provided one in 1995. Maths postgrad here. This is a real interesting one. The proof is long, real long. At best, or worst, undergrad proofs may be 5 to 6 pages long. Now I specialize in applied maths, so perhaps it's double or triple that in postgrad pure maths. Wiles's proof is well over 100 pages long. It draws upon many areas of pure maths to the point where even actual maths academics may not understand every topic involved in the proof. Haha, well, can't be any worse than the proof being left as an exercise to the reader. The Andreen MacDonald case. She and her husband Andre, yes, Andreen and Andre, originally were from Jamaica. They moved up to my town in Texas, where Andre was Air Force and Andreen was a bodybuilding business owner. Andre was pretty jealous that Andreen was more successful and was constantly begging/demanding that she make him co-owner of her company. She always said no. One day, he had it and did away with her. The gym that she frequented every single morning got concerned when she stopped showing up. She was very close with the ladies that she worked out with and even gave them a key to her house. She told them that if she ever went missing, that her husband probably did it and they knew he had an attitude. So one day, while Andre was out, the ladies went to check on Andreen. Her car was there, her wallet was there, but she wasn't. They found blood and hair in her bathroom. That's when cops were called. Cops showed up when Andre was home and asked about Andreen. He said she was in the hospital. They asked him, if she's in the hospital, how come her wallet's here? He responded simply, talk to my lawyer. They got a warrant and were able to search the house further, saw more leftover evidence in the bathroom, and evidence of clothes had been found burned in the fire pit in the backyard. But no body. So all they could do was charge him with a missing persons deal. Andre was super snarky about it too, how he'd be proven innocent, how the cops would never catch on. Little did he realize how loved Andreen was, and how much Texas ranchers hate corrupt and snarky murderers. Crowds gathered daily and were given permission to sweep over ranchers' land for any sign of Andreen's body. Just as crowds started feeling defeated, and Andre started to see hope of being released, a rancher was scoping his field. He had heard coyotes out and went to see what could have enticed them. Sure enough, he found human bones, later identified as Andreen. So yeah, proper charges were able to be filed. Add-on. So some ask why she stayed or why he felt jealous that she was more successful. Remember, they're from Jamaica. The whole point of coming here was to better themselves and bring pride to their families. So she was doing great, but because she was doing so good, his family was kind of looking down on him because his wife was better / more successful than him. And then she stayed with him, mainly because she wanted to try and make sure their daughter's life could be as normal as possible. Sucks that kind of backfired for her, but now she's being taken care of by her aunt and grandma who both love and support her. Apparently he killed her in front of their autistic, non-speaking 6-year-old daughter. The guy is pure evil. Kids like Cinnamon Toast Crunch because there's a bunch of sugar on it. My parents wouldn't buy me Fruit Loops because it was unhealthy. Instead, Cinnamon Toast Crunch still baffles me to this day, and I'm a father now. So, in the early 2000s, someone posted new wave music that had been initially recorded off a German radio station on cassette around 1985. It contained about a minute of a song that became known as Stay the second time around, that no one seemed to be able to find any more information about. This became a pretty famous earworm internet mystery until 2013 when folks on Reddit discovered the actual song and artist. It turned out it was a song by Swedish artist Johan Lundell titled Up on the Roof that never became any kind of hit, and up until that time had never been re-released after the original analog release. Rex Nesselroy. Over a good few years, he was an absolute piece of shit. Lived in Skidmore, Missouri. Groomer, rapist, married this 14-year-old girl who he gave Stockholm Syndrome to avoid rape charges, piece of shit lawyer to get him out of literal attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, etc. It was well known that he also stole cattle or something like that, but because of the shitty law system, they couldn't do anything about it without direct proof. Oh, did I forget to mention that he had kids with this 14-year-old? One of his crappy kids tried to steal some candy from a store in 1980. The store owner, who was 70, caught this kid, so Rex started stalking the family who owned the store, coming to their house and just standing in front, making threats and all. In a confrontation, he tried to blow the owner's head off. Ernest Bowenkamp, the owner, dodged and had his neck grazed, and he was quite hurt, but alive. Finally, he was caught for this and found guilty of attempted murder, but bailed because he was rich. People would literally leave whenever he entered a bar. He bullied a sheriff into stepping down from his job and was constantly loaded with money, buying new trucks all the time. Well, eventually people got tired of this shit. Dozens of people followed him into the bar. McElroy finished his drink, went back out. As he started the car, an unknown amount of people opened fire on the bastard, absolutely destroying him. As a matter of fact, they wanted him dead so bad they found revolver casings on the ground, meaning someone had enough time to reload an entire revolver. There were numerous shooters, and the Stockholmed wife called out one shooter, but every other person there, around 50 people, said that they saw nothing. And hell, some even said they heard nothing. So yeah, Bastard was dead after near a damn decade of ruining this little town. Investigation was concluded, with nobody charged, no proper testification, nobody sentenced. But we all know it were the townsfolk, and McElroy deserved it. My grandfather's takeaway from Skidmore was that Chevy made fantastic engines at the time. Apparently, Rex's dead weight pressing in the gas pedal of his Silverado and the engine went full bore in neutral for something like 16 hours before it blew. Edit, trying to find sourcing on this. The closest I can find was that the sheriff left right before the killing, and when he came back, the engine was still running. Don't know how long that was. I remember right before McElroy was shot, the rest of the town held a meeting about what to do about him. The sheriff said something to the effect of, "Just form a neighborhood watch group. Whatever you do, don't take matters into your own hands." He then presumably winked at everyone, got in his car, and drove to the neighboring county. Edit, spelling and punctuation. The Windsor hum. Residents of Windsor, Canada, have been saying they could hear a hum coming from across the river in Detroit for the better part of a few decades. Well, turns out that when a steel producer turned their furnaces off recently, when they were closing up shop, the hum stopped. People had no idea what the noise could be until the factory closed. Edit, also a little fun fact, Zug Island, where the factory was located, was mentioned in RoboCop and was also the destination of the SS Edmund Fitzgerald before it sank. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to press the like button and subscribe. I really appreciate you guys. If you want to suggest interesting Reddit posts, drop them down in the comments. Till next time, peace.